Thank you guys so much. It's moments like this that make the fight so worth it, to know that, you know, there's people who appreciate how hard it is to be an artist in a industrialized commercial world. So I like to start with a question so I can feel an idea, energy, or a vibe of something you'd like to know, and then I riff off that, as opposed to preparing anything.
Sounds good. We're ready for you. Lashovo, you are up.
Thank you. All right, so the question, how do you navigate, how do you avoid being stereotyped as a hip hop artist when you're navigating all these forms that you're working in?
Well, metaphorically, to be stereotyped as a hip hop artist can be very much a hood that can put you in positions where people wouldn't expect you to be. And in the same way how when you step into places and they have a "you're not from here" type vibe, if you are from there and you're too accredited, a lot of times people will put their guards up and be less willing to work with you. And a lot of times I've been able to work with the most amazing people on the planet because I was considered not to be a threat to what they do, because I was considered to be a hip hop artist. So it allowed me to work with Amerikami or Kondo or Ricardo Tisci or, you know, Spike Jones or Spike Lee or all these different fields that so-called box allowed there to be a level of, like a marriage or something. Like people like working with people that are married because obviously there's these people are willing to be controlled and compromised. So, so actually I use that little box and that stereotype to my advantage to be able to just kind of put my hoodie on and collaborate as much as possible.
Atunu, are you ready? I'm coming back.
Being in the music industry, did you ever feel like you had to dumb yourself down or make yourself palatable for like a certain audience? And then was there any time that you actively decided not to do this?
Yeah, I think that people know the times where I actively decided not to do it because it breaks the internet every time. But I think the idea of dumbing down, each one of the things that you guys are gonna say, I look at, there's a positive and there's a negative that you think of as an artist, but there's a positive to it too, because it's the ability to accomplish more and the ability to step back from that immediate battle to win an overall war and to understand how long the war really is and understanding exactly how much to push on your concept and how much information to put in there is how much to concede, when to fight. You know, I remember on Gold Digger, I had this line that said, "When he get on, either you ask for a white girl," and there was a radio guy who wouldn't play it because he was in an interracial relationship. He had a white wife. He was a black disc jock. So it directly connected to something that he dealt with issues with his entire, marriage and relationship. So he didn't want to play that. I remember there's video footage of me getting really upset and fighting for that to be played. And you get like one of those Kanye West outbursts. But I was fighting at that time for the idea of the art not being compromised. Like, I didn't curse, So what's so wrong with this concept? It seemed like there was so many, whether I was using imagery of the Klan on MTV, and I would say, okay, wait a second, so we can play this many G strings, right? But if you play an image of the Klan, and what it came down to is, oh, this is bad for business, this is bad for advertising, or it's making people think too much, or it's bringing a truth to people's attention that we don't feel like right now. And I think there's something about, there's different kind of drugs. If anyone's been on vacation and taken drugs before, I'm in an art school, so I'm just gonna assume that this has happened. But there's drugs that make you tell the truth. There's drugs that make you happy. There's drugs that make you sad. There's different types of moods it can put you in. And music is like a drug. People go on vacation and say, did you bring I won't say the D word, but did you bring the drugs? And and they say also, did you bring the music? These things go together. Did you bring the alcohol? It was so, the interesting balance of making enjoyable music that also had truthful information in it, it was like always a very, very fine line. A fine line of when to break the high, in a way. Because there's a lot of, dance music, like Four on the Floor. It seems like it's trying to just be strictly the high and never break it. Never give any type of extra information, just strictly be the smoothest drug possible. And with backpack rap, it was always like this responsibility that we felt to, our parents, our ancestors, and to our generation at that time to use our platform of the drum to educate with it. And we took it as a responsibility more than the responsibility of like personal wealth. And I think that was the beginning, first notes of any Steve Jobs comparison, before I even knew to have the audacity to compare myself to Steve Jobs. There was that idea of the bins in the backpack, the mix of the information, the responsibility to my parents who are educators, and the understanding that it had to be a bit dumbed down. It had to be accessible in a way. All right, next question.
This is Andrea.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. Do you feel your work is influenced by the Baltimore riots or any other events within the Black community? Can you give us an example of how current events targeting bodies like yours affected your practice?
I think every time we would go to the studio, we would recap our entire history up to that point. Current events and, the past 500 years or past 2,100 years. I say that because I'm on the Christian clock, because I'm a Christian. And when I work really slow. I let the steak marinate. So the idea is of jumping to current event to event to event. They usually come out in the music over a 4 to 6 month period from after they come, because everyone wants to speak so quick and so emotionally and react right away. And it's just the way I create my music, the way I create my content. It just takes me a little bit longer, a lot more conversations, and I don't like to complain without trying to find or offer a solution, which takes even longer. So that's the process, and that's how events like that affect my eventual, the things I eventually say. Yeah. All right, next question.
Sunny.
I've been waiting a long time. She's my girl, and ever since I was this tall, it's been about you. But I had to ask a question to get to this question. But my question is, I'm from the west side of Chicago, and this is gonna get a little emotional, but I've lost two of my friends to light violence. They got shot and killed, and I make all the right decisions. I never did drugs, never did anything, but I'm scared. I'm scared I'm next, and my family and I, we live on a street, and we're scared for bullets to come through the window and hit my sister, but like, I'm the last hope. I'm the first one to ever make it, and I'm so hungry, and I need something. And I'm just hoping you give some guidance to all of us. We got Vic up there, we got my buddy Ben up there. Like, we need something to keep going in this city, because I don't know if somebody else in my life or do it myself. I don't know how to get out.
I'm speechless. I don't have an answer to that. I can only just listen to you and feel and understand what we're dealing with here. And I can't say that anything that I do or say will be the end-all, be-all difference. I mean, we can just try. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try to give any politically correct answer that somehow makes it seem like after I said that, it's all good. Because it's not all good, it's fucked up out here.
Floor is open. Somebody want to ask?
Sorry. Okay, I'm Claire. That's something really hard to follow, but this is something I've been thinking about, like, while you've been talking. I'm a fashion student, and I was thinking about, like, process, and my process being something that's, like, based on, like, a feeling, based on a mood. I don't really respond well to, like, sketching, and I'm, like, really interested in what your hand is in your design, like, with your collection. And just kind of wondering, like, what your process is and, like, how you start, like, how you get an idea, and, like, yeah, just what your hand is in that process.
Well, my process is very similar to how I work on music, and I had this epiphany like 2 months ago that I was in the exact same situation, obsession, and position in clothing that I was in music about 13, 14 years ago, because when I moved to New Jersey from Chicago, my entire apartment was filled with records from head to toe. And when I was looking at my a room in my house 2 months ago, it was completely filled with vintage samples. And the bathroom had been taken over with shoe samples, and it had like the first Louis Vuittons and a pair of Yeezys, a colorway that never came out, just completely, like you couldn't even use the toilet. It was like, so, and I was like, wow, this is the same process. And it's funny that you talk about process, because when I hire designers, a lot of them have an issue with my process, because I do 1 million style ups, and a style up is where you take vintage clothes, you get like 100 vintage pieces, and then you sit there, and you and one stylist or me and 6 stylists sit there, and I say one stylist because design is so like contained. Most designers are extremely arrogant and don't want to ask a lot of questions, and then like Johnny has 17 designers that have like, and he's the best designer on the planet, And so my process, I try to think about the way Johnny Ives would approach it, the way Steve Jobs would approach it, the way Walt Disney would approach it, the way Howard Hughes would approach it, as opposed to the way fashion had normally been. I don't even like the word, I think I'm trying my best to not say extra politically incorrect things, anything unnecessary. But to speak to that idea, I'm constantly trying to find my process. Even right now, as I'm doing recruiting for my next collection, and we're going to fashion houses and poaching talent and schools and getting talent, I talk about not the process of just a fashion brand, but the process of an animation studio, a process of a car manufacturer, the process of Apple, obviously. Like, I want to see everyone's org chart. I want to see 10 versions of org charts, just in fashion alone. Like, why does H&M work and Zara work? Why does Celine and Givenchy work? Why does The Gap somewhat work? Not really, you guys should call me. Why did The Gap used to work? Shots fired. But why does J. Crew work? Oh, Mickey Drexler is a genius, of course. Why does Apple work? Why do these? What are the strategies? What is the setup? What is the process that makes all these companies work? And it's interesting because you always hear about, now tech pulling from fashion, because fashion has this understanding of culture, which is, what art drives. And how do you do it in a way where you truly understand it and you're part of it? Like, say, the reason why I always say I like Apple better than Samsung, and I'm sorry, I say it every year, but I mean, they just kicked their ass. Samsung had a watch. Oh, we don't remember that, do we? Because now Apple's is way better. But, Johnny will sit and get Mark Newsom to come in that did the iCopod and design with them. Or like when I worked with Murakami, I would get them to work together. And what happens with like commercial or the average business world, and in my mind, I see millions of colors. In the business world, I only see one. What color do you think that is? Green. Yeah. Which actually is my favorite color, ironically, for some reason, not because it's the color, but it was my mom's favorite color, and I think it's just color, nature, and it's an awesome color. I really don't like blue, actually. The color, not the child. I love blue. I love Jay-Z's daughter. So don't try to, and then they're gonna say Jay-Z doesn't like to ever fly on Northwest. But that question, it was so interesting that you asked that question, because literally, like, I'll be, having a style up, and I'll be sitting there going through look after look after look after look, and like a designer will come up to me and say, "It's time to sketch now." And I'm like, "No, it's not. We don't have enough information." Or, "It's time for you to do the styling because I like the way you put it together." I'm like, "No, it's not. I don't have enough stars to build this constellation yet. I need to keep seeing information, because we want to invent, we want to contribute something. We don't want to just capitalize off of what happened in the past. We don't want to just do our version of a polo collared shirt and put a logo on it. We want to contribute. We want to think about what society needs, what people need right now, and how can we provide it to them at a price that's, realistic. I don't even use the words affordable or contemporary and these type of things. Realistic, and how, I just visited Axel Vervoort. He has I'm gonna say this name wrong and you guys are gonna diss me, but Fortuny, I think is the name, has a palace in Venice, and I just came from the Biennale, and Axel Vervoort you can't even pinpoint exactly what he is, but he's like a mix between an architect and an artist. It's almost diminishes him to say interior designer, but that's a form of what he does. But his main point, and I look at him as like Yoda. I don't know if he looks at me like Luke, but I look at him as Yoda. And his whole point is proportion, how important proportions are. So if you think of the idea of luxury, I have a theory and a feeling right now that I got from looking at Axel Vort lectures that the luxury is in the proportion, whether, you know, small proportion or Rome size proportion. The luxury, so when you think luxury, I don't think of a really tight Gucci jacket with a logo on it. There's nothing luxury about that. That's an insignia to say I'm part of this gang, or you know, I spent this much money on it. But then you'll see like pictures of families in Africa that look so dignified and so stylish, and there's no way that their entire, you add up everybody in that family's outfit, there's no way it costs as much as that one Gucci jacket. And the understanding of proportions. Like when I was doing Yeezus and I was in Paris, I was working on my apartment and I worked with this architect named Joseph Duran, and he introduced me to Genere, Charlotte Perriand, and Corbusier. And Corbusier, I bought this lamp, and it was dumb expensive. It was like $110,000. And it was very inspiring to me. It inspired the Yeezus album. Not just because it was expensive, but more for the fact that it was free when it was first made. And it costs a lot because it's a statement now of class where these French gallerists charge rich people more, which I thought was really interesting as the world becomes less racist, that there's still a really big class war. There's a real separation of the classes and the masses. And Corbusier gave the people higher ceilings, literally and metaphorically. And I remember at that time I was going through leaving Nike and going to Adidas. And I was also dealing with trying to get a deal with a luxury house because I wanted to paint. But I wanted to paint with usable art. Sculptures equals clothing. Clothing is a form of usable art. And I would look at that lamp that was made of rocks and cement, but the shape was so beautiful, and it wasn't even made of marble. So when it was time to do the Adidas collection, I left Nike because they refused to give me a percentage because I was not an athlete, and I don't have an NDA that says I can't say this, even though it seems like wrong to say out loud. I left Nike because they refused to give me a percentage. They also offered me $4 million a year to stay, which is a unknown thing, but I'm sure it will show up on Hypebeast tomorrow. I wanted people to know that. And I still left them because they weren't giving me the opportunity to grow. They were working on an old business model, and Phil Knight was somewhere on an island. And then Mark Parker would go and find people who I collaborated with years before and try to do collaborations with them to seem cool. And as you see, Nike hasn't done like one cool thing this year. Shots fired. And these are available at Foot Locker right now. These are just Adidas that are fresh. They're not even my shoes. I don't even get paid anything. I didn't even get paid anything to wear them. But the point was, when I would look at that Corbusier lamp and think, he made this and he put this lamp in zoos so everyone could have it. It was about everyone having an opportunity to have beauty, to be inspired. How many times have you walked into a designer store where you really like the head designer a lot, and then you just, you know, you grab the piece, and it's just impossible to even consider how you could possibly ever afford that. And you might just spend some time in the store until the point where they make you feel so uncomfortable that you have to leave. And you're like, I just want to be at least around it for a while. Or you could take it to the next level and just try it on. Catch a nice little selfie up in a dressing room, post. So one of the things that I loved about being nouveau riche was the ability to take those things out of the dressing room. And by doing that, I was able to learn and educate myself. You know, I saw the Dior documentary, and Dior was educated from day one. He was born with wealth. And as you guys know, whenever you try to get credit or car loan or anything like, you gotta have something to have something. It's almost impossible to start from nothing. Or maybe you have an extremely amazing talent and you can get a scholarship, like I did at one point. I had what is it called when you don't have the whole scholarship, but yeah. Partial scholarship for 6 months at the American Academy of Art. Don't boo me for saying that. That was the school I went to. Because they gave me and I had a scholarship here too, partial. And then when that scholarship was up, I was fortunate enough that my mom was a professor at Chicago State University, so I could continue my education until I had the opportunity where I was, making enough money at the craft. I wanted to talk about this barrier between art, music, and fashion. Because as we know with the class system, you know who's the highest, of course? Art. Art is considered to be the highest on the class system of creatives. Somehow even above a director. That can't even be mentioned in the same breath as that. And I was on the phone with Steve McQueen one time. He said, "I'm not a photographer." He had to let me know, okay, but you use the camera, Steve. And I thought it was really amazing that Steve McQueen, the best thing I thought about Steve McQueen winning an Oscar wasn't, as some people have told me, he is the first African-American Oscar winner. He's not American, bro. So, but I thought what was the best thing about Steve winning that Oscar was the fact that he was able to be excellent at 2 disciplines. Absolutely excellent at 2 disciplines. And there's theories about people who are amazing at stuff actually are amazing at other things. So it's so weird. So Lewis Hamilton's over my house, right? And he starts playing music. I know I'm super Randy Jackson. I'm super Rando, It's gonna be these random ideas, they all make up a point. And he's there, and we're playing some music in my studio. We're having a Easter brunch, and all the family is there. It's everything. It's all of my wife's family and a lot of my friends and everything. And he's playing music, and everybody's like, "What is this music?" And I'm like, "It's Lewis Hamilton's music." And they're like, "Oh my God, I thought it was gonna sound." I'm not gonna say the names that they said they thought it was gonna sound like, because that would be. But it's good. It's really, really good. And it goes back to my point which is a selfish point of mine, because I want to make it back to the fact that I'm going to be a really good clothing designer. But just as a point of discipline, for Tooney, is that how you say the name? I don't want to mess. Okay, because he was a theater designer, clothing designer, painter, merchant, and that people can have more than one skill set. But let me flip it on the other side. So I have to use this example, and I won't say the names, but I'll just say a friend of mine, and they might be here. But a friend of mine showed me their sketchbook and their fashion collection. And when they showed it to me, I looked at it, and it had vibes. It definitely was vibey, you know. And when I saw it, I said, well, are you still in school? And the kind of response, maybe I'm gonna go a bit heavy-handed on it, was that they didn't need school. And then when I tried to express why they did need to have that education or really get their craft together, they brought up, of course, my best friend and creative director, Virgil Abloh, who has an extremely successful clothing line right now, and also is extremely successful DJ and extremely successful creative director, obviously. But I really stressed the point of how important education was. And this is from the dropout at it, as always, you know. I sat with Louise Wilson a couple weeks before she died, and she told me, Louise Wilson is the acclaimed professor from St. Martin's that taught Phoebe Philo, Alexander McQueen, John Galliano, and I feel like I'm her honorary student also. And she sat there. We sat at Hakkasan's, and she talked to me for 3 hours. And she always said, these students today, they ain't worth shit. She got sued like 4 times, you know? It's very harsh. And have you guys ever saw Whiplash? Yeah, something like that. And she said, how's your daughter doing and everything? And I remember the last thing she said. She said, you know what the problem is with all these students? As soon as they did anything, from when they were really little, their parents clapped. And the point she wanted to make to me, that she said to me as we were leaving out the hallway of the restaurant the last time I saw her, was, don't clap. You have to push them. You have to drive them. I remember the first time when North climbed all the way to the top of the stairs. And I'm trying to say that Kim would have grabbed her by 3rd stair. But she felt like she had to impress me so much and be more dynamic, or hit the highest point that she had ever, you know, hit in her life. And Louise was really hard and, you know, difficult with the students, but I felt like when you like Celine, when you like McQueen, all these things that have inspired us, I'm just talking directly about fashion, it's because there were people that pushed that hard. And, you know, not to defend myself, but just to take this opportunity, because I have the mic. It's not someone else's mic. It's my mic. I could talk right now. I feel a responsibility to push in the world. I feel a responsibility in my position to be like, this is some bullshit. Am I the only one here that's not crazy? Am I the only one here that's not afraid of losing their Samsung deal right now? I think the responsibility that we have as artists, and I will mention myself in the same breath as you, because after Tuesday, I will have a doctorate. So. The song Can't Tell Me Nothing never rang so true. But I feel throughout time as artists, our responsibility was to the truth. Because how else could history be documented? How else could our time be represented, this time that we had? You know, who's going to stand up and say, you know, as the gentleman said earlier today, how it really is right now? Who's going to express that? There was a time when hip-hop expressed that. It doesn't anymore, in my opinion. It's just very simple. It's like, I'm a fuck yo girl, I got the drugs with me, I bought a foreign car. No more hit. You know, when I would sit with Farrakhan, as I've done many times over this past year especially, and got really close to him, he would stress that responsibility of the truth no matter what. When I would sit with Steve McQueen, he would express that responsibility of the truth no matter what. Matthew Barney is my favorite artist, Vanessa B. Croft. I've got a list, but Matthew is my favorite. That is my truth. And when I go and see a 5-hour piece, I just felt like he didn't hold back from what was in his spirit. I felt like he expressed exactly the way he saw it, and that's also I use all these words, and I have a really simple word that I want that describes it the best, and I don't want to do a Porky Pig and to, say 4 words to describe this one word. That is my hard drive. It has the little rainbow spinning wheel on my desktop right now. I guess this could be it. That is the privilege of art, is to express exactly what you feel and to never lose that. I refuse to say the sentence all the way through about how everyone was born, and I'm not even going to finish that sentence. But to capture your childhood, I say all the time, every opportunity that I get, every expanded opportunity to paint, I feel like I'm getting younger and younger and younger. The idea of becoming an adult is the idea of conforming and compromising. My daughter, I know she goes to sleep and she dreams this whole plan about how she's gonna get away with whatever she can possible by the time she wakes up. And I think that that's also a responsibility of artists, to try to get away with whatever you can. Because everyone's compromising. Everyone is placing themselves in a social debt based on how big their house is or how fast their car is and how fast the car is next door to them. They're losing their art. They're losing their passion. They're losing their purpose. It's like the whole world is based on showing how much you have or posturing in that way. I went into debt to chase my dreams. I went into debt when no one wanted a straight black American entertainer to design a dress. I went into debt as a rapper. As a rapper, I got my Ghost, all this, and it was like this unspoken word amongst the industry that somehow people felt like they could posture on me. But I'm motherfucking Kanye West. And there's no value of house, of car, of idea of debt that will control my 3-year-old that I have inside of me, that will stop my artistry, that will stop my truth. There's no mass public perception there's no immediate finger pointing that will stop my truth. So, you've heard the term, no weapon against me shall prosper. And I would gamble that there's no current celebrity that there have been more perceptions of mental or verbal press weapons formed against. And I'd also say there are none more prosperous. So this is just an example that it's all smoke and mirrors. Other than what the gentleman talked about earlier, none of it's real. You know, you can drive past a homeless person and think, who's richer, who's freer? Drive past a homeless person in a Maybach and think, who's richer, who's freer? In the future, I think because we're more visually driven due to, thank you, Instagram, thank you, internet, thank you, just the communication of people understanding art, like art being in style, in fashion, known, you know, and appreciated. I think there will be more opportunities for us to be successful as artists, be appreciated. Art means something. Fonts mean, I get emotional over fonts. Spacing, proportion. Okay, I'll take one more question. That was my answer to that question, by the way.
Hi, I'm Mariah.
Hey, what's up?
On SoundCloud, I'm Auk. You can check AWK. But I wanted to know, as a person who's pursuing music, but also feel as if I have some academic obligations to finish school, what does this honorary doctorate mean to you?
You have to move based on opportunity. If you have an opportunity to make a living at exactly what you dream about, you have to pursue that at that time when it's there. If the opportunity isn't there, just keep educating yourself as much as possible so that when the time comes, you'll be even better at that dream that you had. What I keep saying is I don't want to totally touch on this too long because I might start, crying, but I would think that my mom would trade in every single Grammy, BET, every award for her son to have a doctorate, being that she was Dr. West. I won't touch on this too long. So I always was frustrated when I would come to this type of, well, I never came to quite this kind of thing, but you go to a music seminar and everyone's giving people some comments or ideas, when I couldn't express myself. So before I close, I would like for you, whoever still has a question, just scream the question at me, all at the same time, right now, and I want to see if there's anything that I hear that I want to speak on. Go ahead, this is your last chance. I'm leaving with it. Yes, I do. I do want to build a snowman. Hader Ackerman. The tribe. So why I say I want to build a snowman is because I want Bob Iger, the head of Disney, to invest in my ideas. Not one idea, not a good idea, even a bad idea, a series of them, but just in my ideas. One of my ideas is that as I go to Art Basel and Biennale, all these things, I love Walt Disney. I love what he was able to do. I love Howard Hughes, David Stern, Steve Jobs. But I feel Disney should have an art fund that completely supports all of the artists. And as you say, this idea of coming and getting the talent here, I feel that there should be a responsibility. Recruiters constantly looking for new thinkers and connecting them directly to companies that already work. Why does the person that has the most genius idea or cultural understanding or can create the best art have to figure out how to become a businessman in order to be successful at expressing it? Yeah. Like, you remember Jay-Z has a rap, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. I have a rap that's like, that says, I'm not a businessman, I'm not a businessman. I think it's important that anyone that's in power to empower. I like to think that I have a good eye for art that will be commercially viable. I know that the word commercial is like don't say that. But I think that's my particular skill set. It's certain people who have the ability to, work at the mall and know what's gonna pop there. There's certain people that can curate a gallery. And that's a completely different skill set. And I think my skill set is somewhere in between. So I wouldn't even try to, at this point in my life, curate a biennale but I felt that for these past 10 years, 12 years, when we made music, we tried to challenge the commercial status quo and push art. I have synesthesia. I see sound in front of me. I've been trying to paint this picture since high school. I have paintings of drums, of snares, of chords, the colors that they are. That's white. That's dark color. I see it in front of me. So when people try to separate art from music or fashion or the art of conversation, food, everything is art. We're all part of one big painting, as you guys saw. That was a sonic painting that was happening right then. We're all part of one giant movie, one giant painting. Every day that you step out, you're a piece of the painting. Your contribution. I could say something that, I hate giving like these really like meaningful statements and shit, and everybody's, oh, that really changed everything for me, yeah, and shit. I'd rather be like Michelangelo and not finish the statement, not finish every, and let you, the end of Sopranos or something, let you decide what happens.